Let me get a 1. Let me get a 2. Let me get a 3, 4, 5, up to 2,000 days. Now, 2,000 days, put this in perspective. Let's go get the calculator, because Lord knows I ain't going to fucking know this answer. 2,000 days divided by 365, that's about 5.4 years, okay? That's a long-ass time. Now, to put in perspective, the amount of time I've been playing this game, I started in June of 2015. At that point in time, I was a sophomore in college. I didn't know what I was going to major in. I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do in my life. Fast forward 2 years later for the second year celebration, which was hype as fuck, because if I remember correctly, the second year celebration was LR, or not even LR, it was STR Super Saiyan 4 Goku and AGL Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. And at this point in time, 2 years later, I had graduated from college. I had gotten my first ever job in October. I basically now had entered the workforce. I started paying off my student loan. My parents were going through a divorce. I was so sick all the fucking time that I literally wanted to fucking vomit, and I literally was so sick to the point that I still have stomach issues. Like, I'm still trying to rebuild my biome in this bitch, right? Fast forward to the 3rd year anniversary. At this point, I've been a year at my job. At this point, I've done well enough where I get a fucking promotion. At this point, you know, I'm getting older in life. And it's crazy. It's fucking crazy. I literally have played this game for 5 fucking years. And it's nuts. And I'm gonna go ahead and awaken this Goku first, because what people were saying and explaining was that he has some passive where it only makes sense to boost his what do you call it? His additional, I think. He has like some ability that, like right now I have 14 crit, 12 additional. I may end up re-speccing him to have 15 additional, 11 crit maybe. I don't really know. But I know people are saying like there's not as big of a point to have him be what do you call it? Let's see, one. What is that? Is there any point to keeping these guys around? It's a Goku, so I could use it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And I'm going to use that last guy just as a possible respec. I don't know if I am going to respec. I might or might not, but I'm just keeping him around for the respec possibility. Otherwise, it's 10 Dragon Stones. So there we go. We got your boy LR Goku that now has his EZA. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and be fucking king of all caps. I really wanted to see him awaken and turn Super Saiyan or like change. But let's see what he becomes. What he becomes is attack and defense plus 77% off the rip. Keep +1 attack, defense, and chance of performing a critical hit plus 7%. And recover 77 HP per key. Okay. Okay, so because you get the plus 7% per key, you know, you get 10 key. That's a motherfucking 70% chance, so his crit becomes less important. Plus an additional defense plus 1,000 per key obtained for 1,000... Wait, what? For 1,000 turns from start of turn. Okay. Plus an additional attack plus 2,000 per key turn for 2,000 turns from start of turn. Okay, so they're just like saying fuck it. They just want to have fun. Causes colossal damage to enemy and raises allies attack and defense by 20% for 2 turns. So that is pretty fucking good. All types key plus 3, HP attack and defense plus 120%. That's a pretty good leader skill. It'd be crazy if it was 150. That'd be like, you know, that'd be on some Swayze shit, but I understand, you know, you can't make him too fucking OP. So let me build a team with this guy. I always, whenever I got him, I always thought to myself, like, oh, because he can be any leader and because he can be anything, realistically, what are you going to do? You could have villains, you could have Saiyans, etc., etc. In reality, you probably want to keep it trill with some Saiyans, bro. Let's see. Select category. I want some pure Saiyans in this bitch. Pure Saiyans, pure Saiyans, pure Saiyans, pure Saiyans. There we go. And now the question becomes, is this guy in pure Saiyans? Because if he is, then there's no point to put him in... Yeah, he is. There's no point to put him as leader. So let's go ahead and get... Where's Vegeta? No, the 5 Vegeta. 5, 5, 5. There you go. 1, 2, 3 to the foe. I like this LR Goku, and I also want to try out this STR Goku. And then who gives key? One of these motherfuckers give key, don't they? Yeah, one of you motherfuckers giving key? Alright, you give key, right? Don't you give key to everyone? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Key giver in the building. Key giver. Anyone else give key? I don't think so. Oh, this guy gives key, right? Don't he give key? Yes, sir. Holy shit, that's some good support. Fuck it. I'm gonna test this guy out and see what he's like. Again, I wish that he awakened into a Super Saiyan instead of being the same old, same old. But maybe they're just saving that for the next 1,000 days, which is 3 years from now. You know what I mean? You can't go all out. You can't go all out. I mean, look at the fucking money they spend on the servers. Like right now, oh my god, dude, the fucking, I don't know why the fuck they choose to load everything into the app. Like this right here, like this cannot be a server call. Like there's no fucking way that a server call is taking this long to load that shit. This has to be the fucking app chugging along because the shit isn't loaded in memory. Like that's terrible. I would never do that. As a newly hired Amazon employee, I would never do that. Even though I've worked there for 0 days so far. But yeah, like I was saying, with this game, 3-year anniversary, that was when the Fusions came out. When the Fusions was looking right. And then for, come on, I just saw the fucking 1,000-day Goku. There you go, right there. And then in terms of the, what do you call it? In terms of the 3rd-year anniversary, that was LR Gogeta and LR Vegito. And at this point in time, I believe this was my 2nd anniversary at the company, right? I think, or going on my 2nd anniversary. And then the 4th anniversary was LR Goku and LR Vegeta. I can't remember what the fuck happened, like, what happened around that time. I don't know why. I can't really remember, to be honest. I can't even sit here and bullshit. But I do, well, actually, no. I remember, that was right before Corona hit. Oh, shit, that was right before Corona hit. That was when the world was still normal. Oh, shit. So that's when that banner dropped, and then basically what ended up happening. Oh, shit, he gets +2 key, too? Or is it just the rainbows that he gets wavy on? Yeah, so basically that was right before Corona. That was at the point when I was at my company for exactly 2 years, pretty much, or maybe 2.5 years at that point. And then I also, at that point in time, that's when, shortly after the 5th year anniversary, is when I was starting to look for a new job, like apply for new jobs. The Corona hit, the economy got fucked, etc., etc. You know how the shit went, right? But then I remember for well, the 6th anniversary didn't happen yet. It's about to, at least for global, it's about to happen in June. The current day, actually today being 2,000 days, is also the last day at my company. Today is the official last day with my company. I had my final day. I basically said my goodbyes. I, told everyone, hey, I really appreciate working with you guys. It's kind of weird because when I joined my company, I kind of had it in my mind to not quickly leave, but I kind of took my job at that point in time because I felt the pressure of just coming out of college. I needed a job, and my company wasn't paying super duper well at that point in time, comparatively speaking to other like fresh graduates. Because when I joined my company, it wasn't a software engineering position; it was a software and test. And if you don't know what that is, that's like a QA engineering position or like a test position. But from my perspective, I was thinking I never did any unit tests in college whatsoever. Even the software I wrote the software, but the shit wasn't up to par where, oh man, this guy's the same Goku. That's so whack. Witty whack, 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 whack. Yeah, so I joined my company and I felt like, oh, I'm getting paid a little less than I wanted to. I'm doing something that for my major, it's good for my major, QA is not bad, but I definitely think QA versus software engineering, you're going to get paid more for software engineering. The work is more exciting in my opinion. Depends. It depends though. It depends what kind of like position you're doing, because like for example, Google has SRE, software reliability engineers, which is like you're not building software, but you are doing a lot of automated tooling. You're doing a lot of programming. It's not so much from a product perspective. That's one thing that's different too, is that when you're a software engineer, you're a little bit more important because you're like a part of the product design, you're part of the product development, you're part of kind of like the design process. Whereas when you're QA, you're not really expected to do any like system design. You're not really expected to do any like future engineering. No, like you're basically like, okay, you should do unit tests and integration tests for this project, which was a little weird because from a developer's perspective, you should be doing unit tests, and like you should so some companies have developers do just unit tests and they only focus on unit tests, and then another individual will write integration tests because they usually take a little bit more time. And the idea is that you're supposed to split up your work in such a manner that the software engineer is like the one that's like, oh, he's the one who's like the brains behind this operation, where you're essentially doing the work, you're defining the items, you do the unit test to make sure it works the way it's supposed to work, and then you would then hand it off almost to, fucking a QA guy to do the integration tests and unit tests, which was what I was doing when I first started there. And then you would hand it off. That person would then say, okay, the tests work. I wrote them. They work integration-wise. You would then hand it off to a DevOps guy, and the DevOps guy would deploy the code. And then once the code is in production, there would be a reliability engineer to, examine the code, etc. I don't know how that model, how popular it is now, because more and more companies were embracing this idea of called shift left, where software engineers are expected to do the unit tests, integration tests, own those tests, also own the infrastructure for that application, deploy that application, and then you also monitor it in production and you own it, like you own that item. And that's what I'm used to, and I believe that's the similar process at Amazon in terms of you're supposed to own your product, unit test, integration test. Once that's code reviewed and it looks good, from there you're supposed to move on to the infra code. If it's not already existing, amend it. Or created, I guess. I would imagine that if it's such a large undertaking, there would be some shared infrastructure for the item. I don't know. And then from there, you would develop towards it, and from there, you would own it, you would deploy it, you test it, and then you would get it out the door. But at my company, I started off as a QA engineer, and one thing that I did that I think that was very good for me is that, like, there was a lot of things that they would do manually because they had, like, manual testers. Like, I didn't know about this when I first joined my company because I didn't understand, I didn't understand that some QA testers didn't like the idea of becoming a software engineer, and they also didn't like of elevated automated tests. So, for example, one thing that I did was when I first started, I'm like, all right, I'm like some QA mong, like I should look at this code. All right, there's these unit tests, there's the integration tests. But because I had a software engineering background with an internship, and I also did the course schedule for software engineering, I was like, all right, this is really fucking easy and like kind of boring. So I was like, damn, like what the fuck? Like this is all you do? So what I started to do, and what I even did, that it was Christmas break, and they asked, like some other team asked, hey, can you do some manual tests for this website? I didn't own the product. I wasn't with the team, but I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll share. And that's another thing. QA has a entity of like, you just work on some shit. Like, you don't necessarily always belong to a team necessarily. At least that's how it was when I started, where it was like, hey, can you help all these? Yeah, for example, you had a software developer manager who was for the team, and then a QA manager for the team. And my manager at the time was, the QA manager for all the QA guys, and it was just different. And so one thing that I did that was a little bit different is that I would just try to automate as much as possible. So, for example, they had I didn't know about their tooling. Apparently they had tooling for like, it's called Selenium. It's a little bit more commonplace and understood for me at this point in time. But I just didn't know about Selenium. I only knew about AutoIt. That's a Windows tool that basically lets you auto-click Windows. Ironically, if I'm not mistaken, the reason why I knew about AutoIt is because I made Dokkan scripts to do shit automatically on Dokkan, like before I knew that like you could use it on your phone. Like I would use it in an emulator and use AutoIt. So I knew how to use it, which is fucking hilarious because I actually use it in my job. And I basically also use AutoIt to take screenshots because I was like, I don't know, had no idea how you do test validation, because this is one thing that more manual QAs did, which was you would go to a website, do these test cases, and then you would have these test cases written out, and it was like a manual version of JUnit where it's like, when you do this, this happens, and then you write out, yeah, this happened, etc., etc. And I was like, this is such a weird fucking system. Like, how is this manual and not automated? And I basically ended up doing that AutoIt shit automatically, and I ended up, what they wanted us to do was to do like 20 websites, and it would have taken probably like, I don't know, 2 days. But instead of like me doing it manually, I just did it manually once for one website, realized what I had to do, and then within a day and a half, maybe 2 days, I basically updated and said, hey, I have these scripts. Do you, like, I literally did it where it was like maybe 12, 15, whatever fucking steps, and I just had AutoIt, and then my manager asked, she's like, oh shit, like, I told them, like, they didn't tell me to make these scripts, but I was like, fuck, I'm not gonna manually click this shit, like, that's so fucking boring. My manager's like, yeah, this is fucking, like, she was surprised, because I did it within, like, 2 or 3 days, and they weren't expecting that, and it was Christmas, so already Christmas is, like, you know, that's the Friday of the year, like, no one wants to do work, period, so, like, yo, this motherfucker did that, and he's working on Christmas? Well, Christmas week, anyway. But that was something that was good and bad. It was good because, like, it showed initiative, but at the same time, it was bad because I showed so much initiative that the manager for the other team that was more front end was asking if I wanted to join their team, because one thing that's kind of common when you join a company is sometimes you can find a team that you gel with better and you could switch. But I didn't want to switch because the team I was with was back end, and I appreciate back end work way fucking more than front end, and that's a personal tendency as well as an experience tendency, because that's just what I've done so far and what I find interesting. And honestly, from a selfish perspective, I've done a lot of front end development on my own, like Chrome apps, website shit like that, so it's not something that I was like, oh, I want to like drill down and learn more about. I won't, at that point in time, I wanted to learn more about back-end engineering, and then right now, like, if the next job had some front-end elements, I wouldn't mind, but I would prefer if it was like 60 to 80% back-end, because I prefer that work personally. But with that being said, I did that work, it ended up going well, and from there I went from QA to like a weird, like, not software, but all kind of software guy, where basically one thing that I had done that I added was automated testing for items that were deployed in AWS. So this was all like kind of like infrastructure as code, or just code for deployment items. And it took a lot of code and it took a lot of testing, but because I was, again, by myself, there wasn't a lot of visibility into these tests. There wasn't a lot of visibility into the time that this item saved. So that's another thing you have to take into consideration. When you're a software engineer, it's like, I built this product, X customers use it. Damn, it's clear to see what the fuck you bring into the business. I'm a QA asshole, and I made this tool, and at the time, I didn't even mention it to my manager, because I was like, whatever, it just makes my job easier. But eventually it became more of a common theme and a more common practice, and something that was a positive. But the point I'm making, like, if you were given an opportunity to say, listen, your job's going to be relatively easy either way, QA or engineering, you should choose engineering, because more times than not, it's a little bit more fulfilling than, in my experience, from my own personal experience. And I know online people say, like, oh, don't do QA, you'll get stuck there, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's true at all whatsoever. To be honest, I feel like you could, like you could be QA for 5 years, but if you go and do interview prep and you're ready to be a software engineer, you're probably going to get down leveled. Like, you might go to another place and say, listen, you know, I have 5 years of QA, I'm level 3, can I work here as a level 2 or work here as a level 1 even? And if it's like a bigger company, your pay is probably going to be better. It doesn't matter, usually. But obviously it's good to have your work experience reflect what you're doing and your title reflect your work, because after a while at my company, within 7 months, I believe, I started running code. And not a little code, a lot of code. Like, I was the main developer for a single product, and I did the source code, I did the testing, integration testing, performance testing, the documentation, the meetings to say, hey, this is missing from this project, we need to take that into consideration, etc., etc., etc. And it was one of those things where it was like, I was doing the work, but my title didn't reflect the work I was doing. And so far in my career, it's a very short career, it's been 3 years, but anytime I got a promotion, anytime I got a title change, it was already shit I've been doing for 6 months. And that's something that my friend, he's actually working at Amazon now, and he's experiencing it, where there's like certain projects you can do at Amazon where you're either doing like trafficking of packages, or you could do projects for other employees. And he personally likes doing projects for other employees, and he's been doing it for about 6 months now, but his title hasn't changed. And so that's one thing that he's interested in when he goes to his review process, or even if he goes to another company, he's going to be like, hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I believe because I'm doing this work, my title should reflect my work. That's very important, because if I had done all the work I did right now, and then I go and present myself and say I'm a software test engineer, whatever, they'd be like, I don't get it. So you did all this development code, but you're a software test engineer? And I go, yes, although my title is that, at my company I have done da-da-da. So it's like your exception to the rule. Like, that's like if you went and you're like, oh, so you're IT, but you wrote a fucking project, then they're going to be looking at you sideways like, okay, well, how fucked up is the process at your company where you're doing majority of the code or whatever it may be. It's just a caveat. It's like one more thing to jump through in the interview. It's not a big deal. The only reason I mention this is because a lot of people online will cap and be like, oh my god, if you ever enter QA, you're never going to leave. You can never be a software engineer. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, you, at any point, you could study more, leave. It's going to be harder. And you could also, within your team and within your company, transition. But it is true. A lot of people say that you go into a company as QA and the intention is, oh, I want to move to be an SDE. My company ended up having that shift where they said, okay, if you can code and if you can do X, Y, and Z, we want you to officially be a software engineer, and we also want software engineers to take on more responsibility. That ended up happening with my company. Now, you could join a company like Google where, like, damn, like, you are a SRE, and in order to even become a fucking software engineer, the fucking requirements are so blatantly different that you need to re-interview, or you need to fucking, like, really do something to show that you're deserving of this role. So that's why I think people say, like, oh, don't accept QA, just study some more, get in, blah, 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 which may or may not be the right thing to do. But for me personally, here's the thing. Up until this point, I wanted to get a job so I could just have money and pay bills, etc., etc. And at that point in time, I had two offers. One was from a quote-unquote witch company, which is, like, those are, like, kind of like consulting companies, Infosys type of shit. And they're not great because you don't work on a lot of new technology. You don't really fuck around with AWS. You're, like, on legacy mainframe systems, etc., etc. And I would have been a software engineer for that, but say if I stayed at my company, and even if I never transitioned from being a software test engineer, right? And even if, say, if I didn't have any projects where I did development, I still had exposure to AWS. I still had exposure to distributed testing and distributed systems. I still had exposure to architecture. And honestly, if my title never changed, I would have been in there, like, getting at those tickets, like, yo, I can do this ticket. And that's one thing that you also have to understand as a new grad from a mental standpoint. It's like, oh, my title is software test engineer. So you might be on some low self-esteem type shit where you're like, oh, that ticket isn't for me. Oh, that work item isn't for me. And that can happen even when I got the title of software engineer. I did do more software development, and I was expected to do more. But at the same time, they would rely on my testing expertise, or they would rely on my deployment expertise, because I had done the most of that work, and they had done the least of that work, and it was kind of like a crutch to lean on. But at the end of the day, like, it's like you went to college, you got a computer science degree, you're what makes being a software engineer. Like, it doesn't matter if you're working at a company. Like, some people take a temporary job doing IT work, and they're like, oh, fuck, I've ruined my career. It's like, no, you're probably going to have to study more, and you might end up getting down-leveled or even, like, just a level 1. But it is what it is. Like, you're going into industry that you want. And honestly, like, working at a company, whatever time it may be, it is a good thing to work at any company for at least a year or so, because you learn about the different procedures, you learn about the different professionalism, you learn about the different items where you're like, oh, I know what it is. We're going to have this meeting. I should be prepared with this information, these notes, and present myself well. Oh, we're going to do this project. I should ask these questions and figure out what we're going to do with these items. Oh, we have a new hire coming in. I should make sure that I have this work carved out for them. I should make sure that they feel welcomed, etc., etc. So by working at a company for even a year, definitely if you're there for 2 years or 3 years like myself, you definitely pick up something, and it is a little bit different. And to say that, like, for example, my company, the title was like software engineer. My quote-unquote level was 2, even though my manager literally said, like, oh, you're leaving, we were going to promote you. It's whatever. Like, that, it doesn't mean much. And the reason why it doesn't mean much is because there's such a thing as title inflation. So, for example, you could work at a company like Zillow, or you could work at a company like Blend or like one of those like very good companies, but a little bit smaller, a little less prestigious than like a larger company like Facebook, Google, Amazon, etc. And you have something called title inflation, where it's like, oh, I'm a software engineer 3 at Zillow, but then I go to Amazon, I'm a SDET 2 or a software developer 1, but high level, etc., whatever. And that was kind of my case, because it doesn't really matter. It matters about your experience, but what's important most is the interview. The interview and the way you interact in the interview. So for me, I had a good interview. I did well in the coding rounds. But for the system design round, they were like, you did a good job, but we were kind of looking for this, that, and the third in the interview, and we feel like you didn't show it. So because of that, we're going to down level you. And I got down level to an SDE 1, but I don't know what the, like, some people say the numbers. So like L3, L4, L5, L6, L5 and up at Amazon is level 2, I think. So I guess I'm a quote-unquote L4. But even when they, like, when I got the offer, I ended up getting a little bit more money. Well, actually, a lot of bit more money. Just because of the fact of my experience as well as my performance. And they basically had said, like, you did good in the system design, you just didn't do perfect. And because of that, we want to offer you an SDU1. Like, basically, like, you have a lot of the things needed to be an SDE2, but not enough where we're confident in that, and because of that, we're going to give you this down level. And I feel like some companies do this because, like, for me, fair enough, whatever. I honestly, the fucking pay was good enough, and what they said was good enough to make me say, like, okay, it's not like they're saying you're a dickhead, come in for new grad pay, and you're an asshole. Even if they did, I'm still getting paid more. I may have considered it. But they basically said, like, you know what you're doing, but you're not up to the level of what Amazon is. So we're going to put you as level 1, which is fine by me. I'd rather be a level 1, learn whatever deficiencies, because I might think I'm the shit, and then learn I'm not really the shit. Learn my deficiencies, end up getting promoted, if not next year, whatever, however long it takes, whatever the fuck their criteria is. And then from there, working towards a level 2 position, for example. But the reason why I mention that is because, again, like, I was a software engineer in my company, level 2, going on 3, and then I went to Amazon and it went down to 1. And they said, they said, I don't know if this is cap or not, but they're like, oh, you're like one of the highest level 1s. Like, you're a level 1, but you're not, like, there's different pay grades in terms of where you are in different positions. And it's like, you're a level 1, but you're about to be promoted, so it's like you're close to that goal, that goal line, basically. And the only reason I mention that is because the only reason it really matters is, 1, how the company is viewing you, and 2, your pay. Because, like, if you're a level 1 that has, for example, say if you blew the system design interview and they're like, all right, this wasn't good at all, we need to treat you as a new hire or whatever the fuck, that'd be different. And it'll be also something like, for me, I'm not perfect at system design, but I've done it enough to know that I think I'm decent at it. And it's something that for Amazon at that time, like, there's a lot of different areas that you can go down with system design. And one thing I should have done was ask the interviewer, like, hey, what are you most interested in? The higher level architecture with the different components? Or are you interested in the relationship table for the database? Are you interested in the specifics of the API contract? Like, there's a bunch of different things that you could talk about. There's a bunch of different things you could call attention to. So that's one thing that I definitely will try to get better in the future. But either way, at the end of the day, I'm just saying this for anyone out there that might feel like, for me personally, I would just look online and everyone would be like, oh my God, if you're QA, how are you ever going to be a software engineer? You're stuck there forever. And I was like, fuck, like, I need to study. I need to stop being a dickhead. But even when I was a quote-unquote QA guy, I felt like I was still learning a lot. I felt like I was doing a lot. So I never felt deficient in that sense. But then again, it may have just been my company. It may have just been the fact that they were open to that transition from software tests, whatever the fuck, to the other thing. I mean, honestly, if they didn't, like, let me do more coding and let me do more projects, I probably would have been bored as fuck in my company. I probably would have left. Like, whether it be me going to a similarly sized company or me going to a smaller company, it would have been me leaving because I wanted to learn more and have more exposure to that. And with that being said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like my experience isn't notable, because if I didn't have the experience that I had, especially from a software engineer perspective, I probably wouldn't have been able to get an interview at fucking Google. I probably wouldn't have been able to get an interview at Amazon. I probably wouldn't have gotten looked at by all these larger companies. Because honestly, for me, I thought it was cap when they said that, like, it doesn't matter what your like where you work, but what you do. So I'm thinking to myself, like, this is the biggest bullshit I've ever seen in my life. Like, the only people who work at Amazon are people who used to work at Facebook. The only people who work at Google are people who used to work at fucking, I don't know, Uber or some shit. So the fact that they actually looked at that and they actually were like, oh shit, like, you have microservice experience. This is good. Oh shit, you have cloud architecture experience or exposure to architecture. That's fucking good. And, like, the work I've done, oh, that's fucking good. I'm like, honestly, for me, like, I have low self-esteem, so I feel like I did shit and I've done well. But at the same time, I'm on some fucking, like, I don't know what the fuck is really good and what the fuck is really bad. Because, you know, for a long time, like, even when I was doing well at my company, I was like, okay, am I really doing good? Or is this just, like, is this just because I'm new? Like, I didn't feel like I was doing anything special. I didn't feel like I was doing anything great. But over time, as more people had more questions, I had more answers. As I was able to organize myself better, I felt more confident. It wasn't to say, like, I'm on some, like, academic shit where I'm like, oh, I'm the shit. But the only reason I say this is because I literally just watched a 4-hour fucking interview with academics and Adam 22. I don't know how I missed that ignorance, but goddamn, I love academics and his videos, but that guy's like on some Suge Knight shit, bro. It's fucking ignorant as fuck. But yeah, either way, enough ranting and raving. I basically, reason why I even brought this up is because realizing that I've played Dokkan for 2,000 days, it's kind of crazy to think that I used to just jerk off, play Dokkan, and study for final exams, and now I just jerk off, play Dokkan, and study for interviews. I guess not much has changed, but in reality, a lot has changed, and I think it's one thing that, you know, it's funny because, like, as time goes on, your wants increase, what you need increase, etc., etc. So the reason why I even say this is because even, you know, up until recently, especially last year when I was trying to buy a house, I would always think to myself, like, damn, I wish I had money for a house. Like, damn, I wish I had fucking enough money to, like, if I ever need to fix my car. For example, someone hit my car in a hit and run, and I didn't really want to spend the 1,000 or whatever to fix it, so I'm like, whatever, I'm just leave it, because I don't have, like, money like that where I'm just going to be like, fuck it. I'm, like, it's not totaled, it's not fucked up, it's just the bumper's loose. So I'm like, whatever, like, I don't really want to pay for that, because it's, like, money out of your pocket, and unless you have to, I don't want to. But, like, I'll think to myself, like, damn, I wish I had some more fucking money. But, you know, like, in all reality, like, I was broke when I was in college, and then super broke when I was in high school. Like, honestly, I was so broke in college that the financial aid plus scholarship made me feel like I was rich. Like, when I had, like, $300 or $400 a semester, I was like, yo, like, that shit, like, I felt like I was on the motherfucking, on top of the fucking world. Like, I'm on some motherfucking, like, King Leonidas shit. Like, I got $400? I got 400 fucking dollars? Like, I'm fucking rich, right? And, you know, there'd be times where, like, even in the past, like, I literally had a student loan that I had taken out because I thought I was going to need to use it, but I didn't have to use it. And, like, one of my cats got sick. They ended up having a urinary tract infection, and they almost died. And, you know, like, I like animals. I like cats. I like dogs. But I wasn't thinking of, like, I'm going to drop money on this cat. Like, I really didn't care. Like, if he died, it would have been very sad, but at the same time, like, I'm not trying to fucking spend all this money and shit. But, to be honest, that cat has a lot of sentimental value for my mother, who at that time was going through, like, a shitty situation with my dad getting divorced, finding out this mother fucker had his second family on the side and shit, you know what I mean? So I'm like, yo, I don't need this fucking cat dying right now. So I ended up paying $2,000 some odd dollars from the money I had for the cat. And even at that time, I didn't have a lot of money. That was all the fucking money in my bank account. But it's like, you should be thankful for what you have. And it's like, it is what it is. Like, my upbringing, my parents didn't have a lot of money. And whatever money they did get and have, they spent it like fucking retards. Because, like, even after my parents got divorced, like, for example, like, I know my mother got like 20 grand from the settlement, and she went through that shit within 3 months, which that's where I get frustrated. That's why, like, for a long, I had to, like, get over that, where, like, I would, like, resent my parents and feel like they were just so selfish, because I'm like, I've been working for 2 years and I have like 20 grand saved, and you spent what I saved in 2 years in 3 months, and you don't care about the family, you don't care about buying a house, you don't care about if I can't pay my fucking bills, you don't care if I get laid off. How the fuck are we gonna fucking survive? And that's a fact. Like, there's certain things in your life, like, you need to realize, like, it's you, yourself, and no one else. Like, if I lost my job, I now have enough savings where it's like, all right, I could look for a job. Realistically, the way I'm living right now, I spend like $1,500 a month, and of that $1,500, 1,000 is me, and the other 500 is my family. Sometimes it's more for my family, whatever. point I'm trying to make is that my expenses aren't crazy, and I have some money saved up where I could survive comfortably for like a year. I probably, honestly, I'm not going to even cap. I probably would cut down extremely. Like I would cancel my. I have the phone and the internet and everything's in my name. I pay it. That's another thing. Like if I was living by myself, I wouldn't have the phone. I wouldn't have the TV. I would just have internet for $40. But I would cancel it. Like I don't give a fuck, nigga. Like unless you put up the fucking money, that's just getting canceled. But either way, like that negativity, that negative mindset, where it is true. Like if I ever got laid off, it'd be very hard, and I don't have a safety net. It's me, myself, and I. There's no one that is financially stable in my fucking house. But with that being said, that negativity aside, the reason why I even brought that up in the first place is to say that, a lot has changed over the past fucking 3 years, and now not only do I have a little bit more financial stability and I have a little bit more room to breathe, but it's something that I don't feel as stressed out about, and it's something that I feel a little bit more comfortable with, and it's something that I am thankful for, because like when I go grocery shopping now, I just get whatever I need and I put it in and I think of it in my head and I'm like, all right, this could be like $80, $90. And I remember being little, like you would go to get some groceries and shit and it would be $80 and be like, okay, we only have $70. We need to pick something and put it back. And that was for the week. Like we have $70 for the week. We can't go over that amount because there is no amount to go over. And it's one of those things like you have to be grateful for what you have and you have to be thankful for what you have. And it's not to say that I was the brokest motherfucker ever, but goddamn was I fucking broke. Like I'm a software engineer, which is one of the most high-paying jobs in America, and I still do not have enough money to even think of buying a house. Like it's been 3 years, right? So you have to think about it. Like I'm so deep in shit, and I'm like trying to crawl my way out. Like there's not a lot of foundation to lift yourself up off. Like I understand lifting yourself from your bootstraps, but if your bootstraps don't exist, like what the fuck do you lift? So like, I was broke as fuck, but at the same time, I wasn't like, destitute, was never homeless, was never in a situation where, I went hungry. I was like, there was no food in the house. Sometimes you ate shit you didn't want. Have motherfucking ramen 3 times in a fucking week and want to like kill yourself. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. I definitely think in terms of financially from like college until I graduated, things got a little bit better. And then once I got a job, it got much better where I could afford my bills. I didn't have much savings in the beginning because my pay wasn't super great. But at the very least, my car was paid, insurance was paid. I was able to buy a PS4, so that's something to be thankful for. In general, it was a pretty good experience. And now, nigga, when it comes to the monthly bill payments, I save at least, I try to save, well, not I try, in the past 8 months, I've continually saved $2,000 a month towards a savings account and towards a home, which for some people might sound like nothing, or to some people might sound like a lot. $2,000 realistically doesn't sound like much of anything, but when I say to you $2,000 saved on the side, that has it's not affiliated with any bills, it's not affiliated with any debt, it's not affiliated with any bullshit, it's just a free $2K that's going away. Ideally, if I had money in the bank and I had more stability, I had a house and I was less worried about, living paycheck to paycheck, if things go wrong, I would invest that money because that's what you're supposed to do. But in reality, I don't invest that much of my money. Of all the money I've saved, I think I've invested 1/6 of it because I've been trying to buy a house. Hindsight 2020, maybe I should invest in it, maybe I shouldn't. At the same time, if I ever lost like majority of my savings in the stock market, I would be very salty. So, it's you should not invest with money you need, and that's money I absolutely do need, even if every year I'm losing 2% because of the interest rates. But yeah, either way, we coming up now, healthier now, happier now, got a better job, hopefully going to be as good or better coworkers, because I'm not going to lie. And then the reason why I even brought up the fact of like, I was saying that, I was thinking of leaving my company because I was like a QA guy and I was thinking of like leaving for career purposes, etc., is because when I first started working at my company, I kind of purposely like didn't communicate with my coworkers because one, it was a new weird environment and I just didn't like want to come off as myself where I'm very loud and verbose, etc. And I may do that at Amazon. I might not take 3-4 months, see how the manager's feeling me before I say some shit that is not robotic. But I did that because half I wanted to be more professional and not come off as a mong. And the other half was because I was thinking in my head, like, I don't want to stay here for more than a year. I don't want to get attached to anyone. I just want to come in here, collect the paycheck, talk to these guys, leave. You know what I mean? Like, not relate to these guys, not be friendly with these guys. Not because I hate them, but because I want to be professional. One, I was nervous about that. And two, I was just like, I want to leave any fucking way, right? But at some point in time, I think 2 years in, especially when my title changed, I was like, yo, I like my job, pay is better, etc., etc. I think I kind of became more friendly with them, and definitely today was my last day, and it was a lot harder than I expected to say goodbye to them. To be honest, in a perfect world, if I didn't need money and I didn't care about career growth, I would have been like, yo, whatever, like, why would I leave? I'm happy. Like, that's what some of the people, like, a lot of people in my company, a lot of people in the industry, they call it rest and vest. Rest at a company where it's kind of easy and you like it, and you vest your money and you're just not doing much of anything. But that's like for more senior people, people who've already made the bag, people who already have like larger companies under the belt and shit. And for me personally, and even my coworkers said, they did bring it up, and they said, listen, like, as much as I don't want you to leave and as much as I think you should stay, like, you moving to Amazon, like, that's going to look great on your resume. That's the right thing to do. Like, you're moving to a larger organization, you're younger, that's going to be very good for your resume. Even if you were there for like a year, that's good for your resume. So, it's a good opportunity. It's definitely a learning opportunity. All I've heard, no matter how much shit I've heard about Amazon where people say, oh, you work too much, oh, the work culture is harsh, all they care about is management, blah, blah, blah. I've never heard people say, I've gone to Amazon and I was bored. I've never heard people say, I went to Amazon, there was nothing to work on. I've never heard people say, I went to Amazon and I felt like it was easy. It's always been a learning experience. And if I, God forbid, get fired, or if I, God forbid, find out, like, oh, my teams are assholes and I need to switch, or, oh, I'm just going to ride it out for a year and get out of here because I'm working like fucking 12 hours a day. Hopefully that's not the case. If it's crunch time, production time, you do that maybe once a quarter. I won't mind that much, but not every fucking day of the week, because, you do need time to jerk off. Like I said, jerk off, Dokkan. Interview scheduling and interview fucking prep, right? That's the motto we live by. That's all we do. All we do is work, interview, so we can get as much money in this capitalist system, make CEOs rich, and make ourselves a little bit happier, right? But my coworkers even said, like, this is the good thing to do. You did the right thing in terms of career, blah, blah, blah. But I did like them. I liked them a lot. They were very cool people. They were very nice people. My job, honestly, is like the perfect new grad job. I am so thankful that I found my job. It's a company that is not only nice, it is a company that not only teaches its employees, it's not a company that not only kind of enjoys people expanding and enjoys people taking on more responsibility, but it does it in such a way that it feels like you're being challenged, but not in any certain way where you're like, oh, I'm going to get fired if I don't perform. At my company, when I first joined, I saw 2 people get fired, and I was like, God damn, like, these guys got cooked. But the one guy, it made sense because this guy literally just worked from home. He was an employee that was supposed to come in all the time. He wasn't remote, but he would just work from home like 4 days out of the week, like Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He's home, and he wouldn't be there. And when the manager would call, he wouldn't know what to talk about, and you never saw the guy, and you don't know what the fuck he's doing, and et cetera, et cetera. So from that perspective, like, it's like that guy made sense getting rid of him because it seemed like he wasn't doing anything. Same thing with another guy. He basically got promoted to a level 3 position, but he didn't know how to code. He didn't know how to do certain things. He ended up not doing like any work for like 4 quarters, like literally a year. He did nothing, and he ended up getting let go. And it is what it is. Like, and that's another thing with Amazon. If I go there and I find out, like, maybe I'm deficient, like, oh man, I'm a big fish in a small pond, but at Amazon, like, oh, I don't know how to do these common software engineering things that other people do in 1 hour. It takes me 1 day. Maybe I'm not just built for it. You know what I mean? That does exist as a possibility. Sometimes people get upset. They want to blame others, but in reality, it's just whatever. Like, not everyone's built to be like that. But with that being said, the interviews for these companies are so annoying, so hard, and so, like, anal, that if you pass the interview and you somehow can't perform at the job, I find that hard to believe, because the only thing you're ever going to encounter as a software engineer that's a little annoying and a little bit cryptic is that you're going to be asked to work on new technology, you're going to be asked to use a new framework, you're going to be asked to do new shit that you're then going to have to Google, learn more about, and then do it. That's like 90% of your work. Like, if you never used a tool before, if you never used Python before, all right, Google what you should do with this. All right, that's what you do. There you go. It's not like, okay, we need to implement this A-star algorithm from scratch, and you can't use any outside resources, and we've never done this before, and there's no internal or external code-based example. It's like, no, dude, like, majority of the shit you're doing is straightforward. Majority of the shit that you're doing is not crazy. Honestly, for me, personal experience, the thing that was like a good thing at my company that I'm leaving, that was challenging and something that was different, and it did take a little bit more time to get acclimated to, was the system design, was the architecture, because it was like, okay, how should this be done? How should that be done? And part of the reason why that's a little bit hard is because now you have to think of it, get it approved, go back, amend it, etc., etc. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I feel like I'm talking a whole lot about nothing. Maybe it's interesting, maybe it isn't, but I definitely do think it's one of those things where you do get a little bit older, and as much as people say, like, I feel like a kid that just gets older, which I do agree with that. That is something like you just feel like you're just some dickhead. From high school, I was the same dickhead that I am now, except now I know more bullshit, and I know that other things come into play, and there's more experience, there's more knowledge, etc., etc. I feel like on one end, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and then on the other end, I'm like, yo, I'm the shit. Like if I could go back in time and show myself from fucking high school, or show myself from even college, and be like, yo, you know how to fucking reverse a linked list, dickhead? And I go, you can't do that. You can't reverse a linked list. That shit is almost impossible. And then I show up, I go, yo, dumbass, all you gotta do is have next point to current and then push this shit down, and they go, whoa, this guy's a genius. This guy's amazing. And it's hilarious because I remember in college, my mind being blown when I was asked a question of like how to reverse a linked list. I had no idea how to do it. I would try to memorize it, and sometimes I'd get it right, but at no point did I really have the holistic vision in my head where I'm like, yo, I know how to reverse a linked list from a completely understanding standpoint. But yeah, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I have gone from sophomore in college to college graduate to software engineer. Now I'm leaving and I'm joining a different company as a software engineer. And I played Dokkan throughout that time. I mean, when I had finals, I played a little less. When I had interviews, I played a little less. But, you know, this has been a good game. This has been a game that I originally started playing it because I didn't want to play any console games because I didn't want to, like, waste too much time doing that instead of studying. Ironically, I ended up putting, like, more fucking time and effort into this game than any console game. But it's been a good game. It's been a fun experience, and I definitely think that I enjoy the entertainment that's come out of this game in terms of the subreddit. I enjoy the entertainment that's come out of this game, even just talking to certain people. Like, if I never played this game, I probably wouldn't know about these certain YouTubers who I still watch, and, like, they're really good, and I've talked to a few of them, you know, small conversations, and they're, like, super cool, and like, I wish I had more time, because, like, there's been times where I wish I had, like, more time to, like, dedicate more time to, like, YouTube videos, and dedicate more time to, like, online people, and, like, talking to people, because there's, like, hella cool people online. Like, even like games that you play, you'll meet people, and I've known some guy, I played a game in 2010, I still talk to him through that fucking game. Like, as nerdy as that sounds, you do meet people and you do foster relationships, but it kind of sucks because as you get older, you have more friends, so it's hard to make new friends. As you get older, you have to prioritize your friends' time, and you can't, like, you know, be like, oh, I don't want to hang out this weekend because I'm hanging out with this new guy, and you know, it's kind of awkward if you want to hang out together. I don't know. I personally have not made a new friend since, I don't know, maybe fucking, like, junior year or sophomore year of college. Like, and even then, that was, like, it's always been a friend that some other guy knew, and it's like, oh, it's cool, we're in the group, or, oh, I know this guy, and it's, like, kind of like a circle community. It's just hard. Like, as you get older, it's harder to prioritize your time. It's harder to meet new people. It's harder to prioritize new shit. And especially when you get a job. I have no idea how people who have kids function. Like, I get bitchy and moany when I, like, work all day, and then when I'm done, I have to go do chores, or I have to go run errands. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like, I'm just living for, like, process. Like, I'm not doing anything today. I didn't get the nut today. I didn't get to fucking watch a video today. I didn't get to fucking look at, you know, little fucking Yachty drop some shit with Kodak. Like, I did nothing that I wanted to do today. And that's a little bit of hedonism. That's a little bit of selfishness. Sometimes you just need to do what you need to do for that day. And definitely there's people who have it worse. There's people who have to work fucking 2 jobs. Like, imagine that. You work 2 fucking jobs and you have kids. Like, how the fuck do you function other than an entity that provides for your family? Which, you know, can be fulfilling in itself. But with that being said, that's enough rambling. That's enough bitching and moaning from someone who doesn't need to bitch and moan. 2021, we are on some new job shit. We are on some study hard shit. We are on some interview and get the bag if you have to. Matter of fact, my first day is starting next week, and guess who got an interview Friday? Got to keep them options open. Got to keep it open. I'm not gonna leave Amazon or eat Amazon, but there was a company that I'm interested in that reached out to me. I reached out to them in like October, and these motherfuckers just got back to me now. So I'm gonna just do an interview Friday, some light shit. You know what I mean? If I do well enough, I just tell them like, hey, I accepted this other offer, but I'm gonna keep you in mind. We had that connection. I got you as a fucking network. Da da da, etc. etc. And what's funny is that even today when I was talking to my coworkers, and they were like, "How's the interview process for Amazon?" And I was like, "Oh man, it was pretty hard. It was pretty much industry standard interview. You got to do this, got to do that." And everyone was like, "Nah, I got this job because someone referred me, or I got this job because I just followed someone else, and they just vouched for me, etc. etc." I don't know that privilege. Even when I started the job I currently work at, they asked me, they're like, "Yo, who do you know here?" And I'm like, I don't know anyone. They're like, "No one referred you?" I'm like, "I don't know, I just applied from the website." And they're like, "Oh, yo, if you just got here based off of the interview, then you deserve to be here." Which at the time I didn't really understand, because I'm like, I don't get it. Like, doesn't everyone have to interview? But you know how it is. You got your boy. You're like, "Yo, this guy's got a computer science degree. We used to work at Uber. You bring him over here. You don't need to test him. He already knows what he's doing." And then they just show up. And that could be someone who has a good work ethic. That could be someone who's good. But I haven't experienced that. Everywhere I've wanted to work or possibly work, I have been put through the fucking ringer, and I have been, like, that's the thing. When I get a job, I feel like I earned that shit. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's good because I earned it, and it's bad because I feel like I earned it. Where, like, I basically worked for that shit so much so that it's not like you're getting it. It's just you deserve it, and you, like, not deserve it, because at any point you could be fired. But the point I'm making is, being given a fucking all-access pass at an amusement park is a lot different than working an entire summer, saving your money, and then going to that amusement park. Like, you'll be enjoying it, but you just be thinking to yourself, like, if you really went through some shit to get there, you'd be like, damn, like, is this really worth it? Like, was this worth the fucking trials and tribulations? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But all I know is I'm going to be feeling a different type of way when that first paycheck hits, and my heart skips a beat, and I'm going to have to go to, like, at the hospital, and they're going to wake me back up, and I'm going to go, "Yo, are these numbers real?" And they go, "Hell fucking yeah. Hell yeah." And by the way, the numbers I'm talking about is the fucking taxes I'm going to be paying when I pay 2 fucking state taxes, because Lord knows these goddamn fucking cocksuckers in Congress want my money. But that's a different story.